Hello, everyone. Welcome to the pre-show, where we are pre-showing ourselves. We're getting things together. If you're watching this in the replay, you can probably jump ahead about 10 minutes, and you'll be fine. In the meantime, I'll configure things on my website to point people to the live stream. I'll adjust my chair and my cameras. It's very exciting on the pre-show. This is really the place to be for excitement. Let's change our notice on our website, the little bar at the top that currently says my live security plus study group is Wednesday is right now. Right now, exclamation mark. Click here to join us. And it should point to /live. Let's save the changes. We'll reset the cookie in case someone has hidden it in the meantime. And that will get people over there to the live page. If you're watching this on the YouTube and you want to be in the chat and follow along live and in the chat, you can go to professormesser.com/live, which is what I just put on the website. Let's start up Socrative. Our quizzes, this would be for Security Plus. This would be for September the 20th. Let's launch this. I don't know why I clicked on that. Launch the Security Plus for the 20th. Oh, that doesn't put a thing in there. Teacher paste, that would be me. Does not require names, and start it up. And is that the question we have for today? I guess it is. Hopefully I put all the right questions in. Let's see if my iPad's working. Well, the games are working. How about the keynote? How about some business-related content? Will this play? Will it play? Let's check the analytics. Oh, yeah, you folks are showing up. Thank you for joining us. I need to adjust my chair. We're going to do well, that's a little embarrassing to do, so we're going to do this for the moment while I move things around. It's very high-tech. There, you missed the whole thing, didn't you? Whoops. What happened there? Missed the whole thing. Let's move this out of the way. And let's try some cameras. Camera one. Hi, camera one. Yeah, it's pretty good. That's pretty good. It's pretty good, yeah. Camera two is the bird cam, I call it, that you see. Camera three. What's camera three? Oh, it's my screen. It's my screen that currently is showing camera three. There it is. The question about cheese. And then camera four. Let's put a keynote up so it actually shows something. Camera four. Yeah, camera four works fine. There we go. There we go. There we go. There we go. Yeah, we're all in one piece, aren't we? Let's go to the bird cam. That's the birdfeeder.live. That will really show people what's going on. Oh, it's loud. Bird feeder. And as you can see on birdfeeder.live, you probably can't until I bring you over there. But as you can see on birdfeeder.live, everything's fine in the backyard. Really did not have, the storm came right over my house, right over the studio. We had what was left of the eye wall. What was making that noise? Oh, it's Discord. I need to turn off Discord. But that's that was a lot of fun. Oh, I need to turn on my my yellow highlighter so that people can find that. That's a little utility I use called Pinpoint. And I've done a little customization with Pinpoint to put my little yellow highlighter in there. By default, there we go. Oh, Clive, I got plenty of tips for you. First, you're going to need a Guinness. Secondly, exam objectives. We're going to do some 902 stuff today, so maybe that will work for you as well. There's plenty of tips. Stick around for the after show because that's where you get a lot of good stuff. I'm seeing things pop up on my screen I did not expect to see on my screen. What am I missing? I'm missing something, aren't I? I did the podcast audio before I turned the live stream on, so that's done. We're recording here. You can see the Cylons are going down there. That's a video recorder. Actually, 2 video recorders. You see the 2 of them going at the same time. They're almost synced up, aren't they? I hit the buttons at the same time. Those are recording both the live and the preview, which is kind of what you see in front of me. The right side is the live, what you are seeing. So right now it's kind of an inception thing. And then to the left is, if I was to push a button, that's what you would see. That's my preview. So if I push this button here, so you see that. See how that works? It's like magic. How are we doing on time? We got 3.5 minutes. 3.5 minutes. 3.5 minutes. I've already forgotten what the questions are. Is that bad? I got to work on that. Hello, Curtis. Welcome to the chat room. Now we're dinging. Oh, I was going to get rid of Discord, wasn't I? I was going to turn off some things. Let's get rid of Discord. Goodbye. Let's get rid of Slack. Goodbye. Messages is running, isn't it? I have messages running. Let's put it over here. Messages. Goodbye. There's a dog on that messages. Should bring up my messages. Since the dog was there, we'll have to show you a picture. It's picture time. Oh, that was a bath. And that was Daisy. And that's Daisy right there. There she is. That's her in your face. In your face. Daisy, you're all up in people's business. All right. Let's get bird cam back up, which is different than the bird feeder. We've got this ready to go here. This is on. Boom. Goes the dynamite. ProfessorMesser.com/QA is the link to the QA, which I thought it said on the live page. Is it not saying that on the live page anymore? Let's make sure. It does say that. Follow along with the live Q&A. www.professormesser.com/QA. Yeah, by the time the storm came over, by the time the hurricane came over, it was a storm. So it wasn't a hurricane any longer. So we had branches down and that kind of thing. And it was quite a wind because it was just barely a tropical storm. But everything's fine here. We were without power for a day, which isn't bad at all. We were without internet for 2 days, which was excruciating. That was really bad. But we made it. I had to read things. I had to get a book and I had to read things and further my knowledge. I don't know what that's about, but there I was doing it. In the air conditioning. Act like that's such a big deal. Like I lost internet and the world ended. But I did have to reschedule the study group, even though I was back up with internet kind of a day before the study group was to go last week. It was just the whole city was not quite up yet. And I was very concerned about the lines dropping and coming back up. So I just canceled it and I postponed it really. It's next week. So that's why we're doing Security Plus now. Oh, it's time. It's time. Begin this. Let's go. Let's do a thing. Let's do this. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the September 2017 Professor Messer Security Plus Study Group here from the world headquarters of Messer Studios in Tallahassee, Florida. My name is James Messer, and I will be your host through this next hour of Security Plus Q&A. After that hour of Q&A, I open up the phone lines, and we can talk about Security Plus. We can talk about anything not relating to Security Plus. It could be anything. They are really generally open phone lines. Whatever you'd like to know, you're welcome to call in. There's also a chat room you can follow along with at professormesser.com/live is a chat. We were just chatting in the pre-show about the big storm that came through, which if you're watching this on the replay becomes less and less relevant as time goes on. So it's good we talked about that earlier because you don't want to hear about that now. We're able to do this live study group because you support the things that we're doing here. We make every single one of our training videos available to watch online absolutely free, every minute of every video. You don't have to pay a thing to become knowledgeable in A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and a number of other things. And for the Security Plus, which is what we're talking about today, some people like to have an offline version of that. And if you're one of those people, you can always go to the website and get either a video and audio version of this or maybe just an audio only of this. So there's some options available to you. If you do purchase either of those, you also get my course notes with this as well. I'll talk about the course notes later. And this is something you can find at professormesser.com/getsecplus, GETSECPLUS. Of course, we're doing all kinds of things throughout the month. If you wanted to know what the latest hurricane weather was like and what we ended up doing here, you can follow me on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter. Of course, I'm always there on the YouTube, professormesser.com/YouTube. And don't forget about the voucher discounts available on my website. You can go to professormesser.com/vouchers and get a 10% discount. So don't pay full price for your A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus vouchers. You get a nice little discount right there. I also have, for you Security Plus people, I've taken a number of questions from my study groups and I put them online into an online 20-question a series of exams you can take at professormesser.com/popquiz. That's just something that's there for free. You're welcome to take advantage of it. Maybe that will help you a little bit with your Security Plus studies. There's also a podcast of this content available in the study group. So if you wanted to get the weekly study group onto your podcast catching app device thing, you can absolutely do that at professormesser.com/podcasts. Podcasts. It's not easy to say, but there it is. You'll be able to find that. There's links there. There's RSS feeds. You can play it right from that page if you'd like. I generally try to have these up the same day, if not the next day. This past week with the storm, it took a little while longer, but that's the way it happens sometimes, I suppose. You can always send me a note and ask what's going on. I'll be glad to let you know. So today, we're going to do Q&A. I'm going to focus on questions and answers about Security Plus, and you get to follow along. You get to play along. You get to answer the questions as well. You can go to professormesser.com/QA to do that. Just pop open a new browser window and go to that link, and you can begin answering questions. If you have the Socrative student app, you can also go right to my page or my room that is on Socrative. That's what they call it. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. And you'll be able to go to the same page. Takes you right there, except it's on your app. It's on your mobile device. Kind of nifty. And if you are able to get there, if you have followed those instructions, then you should see a question right now, which has nothing to do with Security Plus, but it's to test to see if everything's working properly. And the question is that Wisconsin, already a little unusual for a Security Plus question, Wisconsin produces the most cheese in the United States. Delicious. Which state is the second highest producer? If you're from the United States, you know Wisconsin, they pride themselves on being the cheeseheads. We know Wisconsin's number one, but who's number two in the United States? If you think you know, you can go to professormesser.com/QA and you'll see my face. That's not what we wanted. We wanted this right here. You'll be able to answer, and the possible answers are Florida, California, New York, Minnesota, New Mexico, and Idaho. So which one is it? Is it Florida, California, New York, Minnesota, New Mexico? Way to go, Idaho. It's got to be one of those, right? So that's one that hopefully you're able to get in. You're able to see the questions. You're able to answer the questions. You're able to get through all of those things. This is what we're trying to make sure works properly. Every question after this, I promise, will be non-cheese related. We'll have Security Plus questions from this point on out. So you can see, I can see in real time how we're answering. 38% of us have said California. 33% of us have said Minnesota. It's almost a tie for first because everybody else is almost single digits. Idaho came in at 13%. We've got New York at 8%, New Mexico at 6%, and Florida at 3%. But really, which one is it? What is number two? Well, in this case, the folks that answered California 38%, you are absolutely right. The top five are: number one is Wisconsin, of course. Number two is California. In fact, the number 1 and 2, Wisconsin and California, way ahead of everybody else. I don't have the raw numbers here, but when I was doing this research, and I do a lot of very important cheese-related research for you, I found that Wisconsin and California way ahead of everybody else. Number 3 on the list, Idaho. What a shocker. Was not expecting that. But I've now got to find some Idaho cheese. New York cheese is number 4, and New Mexico cheese is number 5. Minnesota was in the top 10. Everybody in here was kind of in the top 10. They were kind of in there. I don't want to insult anybody's cheese making because everybody has great cheese there. The reason I mention this, there's always a hook, by the way. Today, September the 20th, if you're watching this live, is National String Cheese Day. So, of course, we're going to have a cheese-related question. So go out and have some string cheese, I guess. Not sure. Is there a parade? I'm not sure what we do on String Cheese Day. We answer questions about cheese, apparently. So there you go. See, the chat room, some folks already had some string cheese today. It's delicious. You'll love it. Well, we're going to talk about Security Plus today. The Security Plus certification. So many questions this week have been about Security Plus to me. And let me try to do a level set for everyone before we all start jumping into what the latest and greatest will be. You have probably seen the latest version of the Security Plus exam. These are the series of questions that you are asked on the certification exam. That exam, it has a version number, and that version number is SY0401. It was the one that was released in April of 2014. It is retiring in July of 2018. So the SY0401 exam questions will not be going away until like 10 months from now. You got plenty of time before this exam ever goes away. So a lot of people were worrying that next month this exam is going away. It's not going away. What's happening next month is a new exam is being created called the SY0501 exam. It's a completely revised set of exam objectives. That will be released on October the 25th. They pushed it back a little bit. It used to be earlier in October. Now they pushed the date till later in October, but it's October. Soon enough. We've got this, by the time we do another study group, it'll be about the time that this new version is released. So you've got some overlap. They're going to release this new version of the questions next week, or next month. Not next week, but next month. And then you have 9 months before the existing 401 exam ever goes away. A lot of people said, I need to know if you're doing 501 content. Well, I am. Of course, I will be doing Security Plus 501 content. It will be rolling out as we get closer to this date, probably even a little bit after it. Most of the time, the way this usually goes, for those of you that haven't been through this before, when this new exam version is released, there is very little content that is available relative to the last 3 years of development that's been going on for the 401 exam. So this is something that a lot of people want to take that early exam, but it really doesn't, it's not a great idea. It's not your best bet. It's not your highest percentage to take the newer exam because there's a fewer amount of content. There's less content available to study from. And trust me, the difference between the 401 exam and the 501 exam is very different. I'll be creating a document when the 501 exam is released that really breaks out what the differences are so you can see, but it's almost a brand new exam. Now, whether you take the 401 exam or the 501 exam, you get exactly the same certification. So there's no better or newer certification you get by taking the 501. You get exactly the same piece of paper. So take the exam that is your better bet. Have a look at both of the exam objectives, evaluate what you have available. And quite honestly, you can't take the 501 until the end of October anyway. So you got time to think about it. Never wait to take an exam. If you're ready to get certified for Security Plus, start studying the 401 and take the 401 exam. You've got 10 months from this date to do it. That's plenty of time. That's plenty of ramp to be able to accomplish that. And you'll earn the same certification as the people that are suddenly jumping into the 501 and they only have one book available and they're trying to learn all this new content instead of having everything that's there already. So that's my advice to you is don't be swayed that, oh, it's newer, it must be better. It's actually not the case. It's actually better to take the older one because there's more things available for you to study from. So that's my comment to you. The Security Plus exam is a single exam. It's 90 questions long. This doesn't change for the 401 and 501. It's exactly the same. It's a 90-minute exam. You might get a total of 90 questions. There are a passing score you need is 750. Now, the scale is between 100 and 900. Isn't this odd? Well, they intentionally make it difficult to understand. So there's no percentage that you can get from this because we believe each question is worth a different number of points anyway. So, but that's one of those challenges. There are different types of questions on the exam. Most of it is multiple choice, but there are a number of non-multiple choice questions at the beginning. CompTIA calls these performance-based questions. They might be matching, they might be fill in the blank, they might be having you complete a certain function, they might show you an image and ask you questions about what you're seeing in the display. There's a lot of different things available there. So make sure that you're able to go through and understand exactly what will be expected of you when you sit for the exam. Make sure you're studying for the correct exam. Don't study the 401 materials and go sit for the 501 exam. I can tell you right now, you're going to fail because the content's like 50% of the content's brand new. Brand new content. It has nothing to do with the 401. That's how different these exams are. And maybe even more than 50% if I was to do the math. Make sure if you're studying for a particular exam that your study materials match the version of the exam you're going to take. Probably the most important thing I can tell you today. So there's your summary of what's going on with Security Plus. Now I can point people to this video when they ask the questions. I get 10 questions about this a day, and now I can say, oh, I've already answered that. Here you go. You can now sit through that. And my droning on about the Security Plus exam. Now, as I mentioned, when you sit down to take the exam, the adrenaline is flowing, you're sitting down, you hit the start button, and the first set of questions you get are going to be the performance-based questions. They're not going to be the multiple choice that you're accustomed to. This throws some people off, and I can understand that. In fact, my tip for you, another tip for you, is maybe you might want to skip over the performance-based questions because in the CompTIA exams, you can move back and forth to any question at any time. So I recommend that people skip over the performance-based questions. If you're like me and can't think when you start the exam, take the multiple choice and then come back to the performance-based. But in this case, for our study group, I got a performance-based question right out of the box. So this will be just like the exam. You've sat down, you've hit the start button, and you get a performance-based question. And here it is. Match the device to the description. So I've given you 5 devices, and I've given you 5 descriptions. And it's a fill in the blank when you're in Socrative, but I've numbered and lettered these so you can do this. If you think they're all matched up already, the answer would be 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, and 5E. So the 5 devices we have are number 1 is a router, number 2 is a WAF, number 3 is a load balancer, number 4 is a proxy, number 5 is an IPS. And the 5 descriptions are, letter A is block known application vulnerabilities. Letter B is intercept all browser requests. Letter C is divide users into separate VLANs. Letter D is configure redundant web servers. And letter E is examine application input. And now that I've pushed the button, you should be able to answer this in Socrative. It'll just be a blank line. And you can fill this in and say that it's A1, 2, or 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5E, which it isn't. But you'll just match them up. You don't have to type the whole thing out. Kind of what I'm telling you. You can just put those numbers there and I'll be able to see them as they come up on the screen. This comes directly from the very first part of the Security Plus exam, which talks about all of these different devices, the 401 exam, which talks about these different devices. The entire structure of the 501 exam is different. And I will start kind of referring back to that a little bit, even though it's next month. Nothing we're doing today has anything to do with the 501 exam. All of the questions we do today will come directly from the 401 exam. But of course, I'm working on all of my videos right now. I'm working on all of my course notes for the 501, and there will be even other things coming for the 501. I'm very excited about what we're planning, what we have planned. And I was busy planning a lot of these things during the storm that just came through. And so I've been busy upgrading web servers, watching a hurricane, upgrading other servers, seeing if the hurricane's coming through. There's a lot of things going on there. But hopefully we're able to get through that. If you think you know the answer to these, go to professormesser.com/QA. A number of you are putting these answers in right now. I'm going to look and see. I can see the next slide. So I know what the answers are. You guys are really good. A lot of absolutely correct answers coming through. Really good answers coming through. Some of you, 1 or 2 are off. The problem on this one, if you miss 1, you automatically miss 2 of them, right? So you don't have a choice. And if you miss 2 of them, you've not automatically missed 4, have you? At that point, you could have missed 3 if you put 2 down wrong. Is that the way it works? Math is hard. How do you do the math part? That's my challenge. So if we look at this, you can see there is quite a lot going on here. We have to know what these devices are. Notice I'm not even asking you what the definition of the devices are. I'm asking about, more specifically, making sure that we know what these devices do. So maybe that's something you are aware of and can work with those. That's something whenever I start looking through this, I try to know these as well. So hopefully that's something you were able to do. Let's see what the answers are. I've seen a number of these coming through and talking about this. So hopefully you've been able to do this too. Some of you, by the way, in the answers to this are telling me the chat isn't working on the website, except it's working great here. Make sure you go to professormesser.com/live. Chat works fantastic because I'm chatting with you. Folks are complaining and talking to me about my math skills. Well, here we go. This is the answer to matching the device description. A router, number one, matches C, divide users into separate VLANs. That's exactly what a router does. In fact, a switch really separates into VLANs. A router allows you to communicate between those VLANs. But since I gave you only a list of 5 things, we really only have 5 things it could possibly be. So if you were to get a CompTIA exam, it probably would tell you, match the device to the best description. In fact, the overall questions tell you, make sure you find the best answer to any of the questions that are asked. Number 2, WAF correlates to E, examine application input. A WAF is a web application firewall. That's exactly what it does. Load balancer is number 3, that matches D, configure redundant web servers. That's one of the benefits of having a load balancer. It's able to balance a load across multiple devices. In fact, if you're on the Professor Messer website right now, you could be going to one of many different web servers. You're really talking to a load balancer, which is then distributing the load across multiple servers. Number 4 is proxy, that matched B, intercept all browser requests. Not all proxies work that way. There's some transparent proxies, for example, that don't really intercept anything. They work transparently behind the scenes, but there are many proxies that do intercept those browser requests and create the request for you, get the response, and then provide you with the response. It's a proxy. It's sitting in the middle. It's exactly, intercept is exactly what it does. It's almost in the name proxy, isn't it? And number 5 is IPS, an intrusion prevention system. And IPS blocks known application vulnerabilities, and they do it extremely well. Being able to use an IPS is something you will definitely want to become very familiar with if you get into IT security. It is a staple. It is a mainstay of IT security, whether it's a standalone IPS or these days IPS functionality that is built into a next generation firewall. So hopefully that's one that can help you as well. So if you answered 1C, 2E, 3D, 4B, and 5A, you got that performance-based question absolutely right. That's one that you should expect at the beginning of your exam to get many questions, a handful at least, that are going to be security related and have a number of these pieces of information in there. So hopefully that will help you with what you're doing. Let's do some multiple choice now. So once you get through the performance-based questions, you're going to go to multiple choice, and let's do a multiple choice question. Our first multiple choice of the day is a question that says, which of these is the best way to manage the list of trusted CAs on a mobile device? Which of these is the best way to manage a list of trusted CAs on a mobile device? Your possible answers are A, manage the list with an MDM. B, maintain operating system updates on the mobile device. C, install anti-malware software on the mobile device. D, hard code the CA list into your private applications. Or E, use a flash drive to distribute the list. One of these is really the best way, there's that word again, the best way to manage the list of trusted CAs on a mobile device. So in this question, we got to know a number of things. We have to know what a CA is, maybe what a trusted CA is, and then we have to know if we have this trusted CA, how do you manage it on a mobile device? This is a pretty common thing that security professionals do on a daily basis. They have to manage their trusted CAs. So it's a pretty good question to ask. If you think you know the answer, don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA. The QA stands for questions, answers. That's why that QA is there. I know it seemed odd to begin with, didn't it? I've now cracked the code for you. You now know exactly. QA, that's what that means. Yes, that's what that means. It's very obvious. Which of these is the best way to manage the list of trusted CAs on a mobile device? We'll talk about CAs in a moment too, because there is a lot about CAs that you will need to know for your Security Plus exam. So make sure that you are familiar with that. Let's see how we did with this one. We've got a number of people that have answered. 72%, a majority, have said manage the list with an MDM. I try to get 50%. That's what I'm shooting for in these questions is 50% of you will get this right and 50% of you will answer everything else. I try to make them at least that difficult. But is the manage a list with MDM, the 70% of you, is that really the right answer? It's a real question, because 21% said B, maintain operating system updates on the mobile device. We also have single digits. D, hard code the CA list into your private applications. C, install anti-malware software on the mobile device. And E, use a flash drive to distribute the list, are all single digits way down here at the bottom. So it's really, I would say, if we had to look at popularity, A, manage the list with an MDM really would be the right answer if we were going by popularity. But of course, we know that's not how questions always work. We know that if you have a mobile device, especially mobile devices, and this can be a mobile device that is a phone, a tablet, could even be a laptop, and of course on desktops as well, encryption of the data is extremely important. And the way that these encryption methodologies work today is usually using a public-private key infrastructure type scenario where there's a public key, there's a private key. It's one of the best ways to encrypt data. So that's what we're using a lot on our mobile devices. So the real question is, when we're storing this data on our mobile device, is it really being encrypted? Every application tends to do this differently. Some operating systems, mobile operating systems, have encryption built into part of the operating system. We're seeing more and more of that as time goes on. But of course, we have data going across the network as well. So we have to make sure that data is being encrypted properly, generally using something like SSL. That's a very common, or probably the most common way to encrypt data as it goes across the network. The thing that we have to worry about and really be challenged with is that for our devices using these public-private keys, how do we know that we can trust the key that the device is receiving? Well, we do that by having a centralized certificate authority. Usually this is a piece of software, a machine we've built, or software that we've loaded, and we've said, you, Mr. Machine, you, Mr. Software, you're going to be our certificate authority. The certificate authority usually has methodologies in there, has functionality in there that allows us to digitally sign public keys, for example. So we can have the certificate authority sign one of our keys, and now it becomes a trusted key. But how do you get that certificate authority certificate down to these mobile devices? One of the most common ways, and probably the easiest way, is to use a mobile device manager. Mobile device manager is a single box and allows the network administrator or security administrator to keep track of, manage, maintain all of these mobile devices that people are taking all over the world inside of your organization. It's a requirement these days that you have one of these, because your very important customer data, your company data, it's on these mobile devices. How do you protect it? What do you do if the device is stolen? What if if the device goes missing? How do you make sure that data remains secure? And how do you make sure that the device is able to encrypt properly if it's a secure certificate authority you created yourself and has nothing to do with the operating system? You simply push it out with your mobile device manager. It's actually pretty simple to do in a mobile device manager, because pretty much everyone does it that way in these devices. So if we look at our answers, the 70% of you that said manage the list with an MDM, that's the right answer. A was absolutely the right answer. Because this certificate authority that we've created is one that we may have created ourselves. It may not be a public certificate authority like VeriSign, like Symantec. So one of the things that we have to be able to do is to be able to push this down ourselves. It can't be part of the operating system. So maintaining the operating system updates on the mobile device are not exactly the best way to do this either. If you want to maintain a list or manage the list of trusted CAs, best way to do it is with an MDM. Installing anti-malware software on the mobile device has nothing to do with certificate authorities. Hard coding the CA list into your private applications sounds painful. That is painful. Never hard code something like a certificate authority in your private application. Because what if your certificate authority is now attacked? What if the bad guys gain access to your certificate authority, which should not happen, but these things happen. And now they have access to all of your private keys. They have access to your certificate authority. They could sign their own keys. That's a problem. So one of the very common things you have to do sometimes is revoke a certificate. Well, if you've hard-coded the certificate into the application, you can't easily revoke it. Certainly a bad idea. So it would not be D. And E, use a flash drive to distribute the list. What a pain. Why would I do? Flash drive won't even work on my mobile device. Why would I? That's a horrible idea. Don't use a flash drive to distribute the list. That has its own set of problems, doesn't it? Your end users don't know anything about a certificate authority. They shouldn't know anything about a certificate authority. You're the one that needs to manage it. The best way is to manage the list with a mobile device manager. And the 71% of you got that one absolutely right. Another question. Hey, it's security related. Who would have known? The question is, which of the following would not be a best practice for password policies? Which of the following would not be a best practice for password policies? Here's the possible answers. Would it be A, the password recovery process should be trivial? B, all passwords should expire? C, a strong password is at least 8 characters long? D, unused accounts should be disabled? And E, passwords should not be reused? One of those. I had to say that the same way every time. I said it the way the first time. I had to say it the dumb way all the way through the bottom to the bottom of that. I need to think about that better next time. The password recovery process should be trivial. All passwords should expire. A strong password is at least 8 characters long. Unused accounts should be disabled, and passwords should not be reused. Which of the following would not be a best practice for password policies? If you think you know the answer, don't answer in the chat room. Go to professormesser.com/QA. That's one where you really need to think about what's there. We're going to take care of some problems. That was easy. And now we're going to look at what the possible answers might be. I'm going to take a sneak peek. You can't see me sneak peeking on this one to see if this is here. Maybe it is. Maybe it is what we want to know. This is whenever I start looking at these questions. They come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. So make sure that you go through the objectives and figure out what they are asking for and what they want you to know. Let's see how we did with this one. How did we do? 79%, another good majority, but still wondering if it's the correct answer. The password recovery process should be trivial. 8% said all passwords should expire. 6% said unused accounts should be disabled. And then a tie for fourth with a strong password is at least 8 characters long and passwords should not be reused. Well, the challenge with this question, of course, is that word not. Is it's asking you which of the following would not be a best practice for password policies. I miss these types of questions all the time. I'm reading quickly. I'm trying to get through the question. Which of the following would be a best practice for password policies? Go. That's not what the answer was. It said which of the following would not be a best practice for password policies. Make sure you think about that whenever you're working through all of these kinds of problems. I think whenever I look at these problems, it does become an issue, knowing what in the world we would need to know about this. And maybe that's one we should start on as well and working through these problems. Let's see what the answer really is. Let's talk about password expiration and how it should work. First, all your passwords should absolutely go away. They should automatically, after a certain amount of time, expire. After 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 15 days, a week. It's up to you. It's up to the policies that you set in your environment, because there's some devices you may want to change them much more often. In the spy movies, they change every day. You have to have that new password every day to launch the missile or whatever they do with those passwords. And of course, the recovery process should not be trivial. It should not be easy to change a password. This is something that when you get your first job, you're working in a help desk, you may get a lot of people calling in to get passwords reset. And a lot of people say, oh, I have to go through all these password resets. Well, absolutely they have to talk to you. You are the person between them and the company's data, which, by the way, is the most important asset in your organization, is that data. So make sure that you are able to make this process one that is not trivial. It shouldn't be, hi, my name's James, calling in, change my password. Can you do that? Oh, sure. Click, click, click. It's done. There should be a Q&A. There should be some questions. Oh, I see you have a secret question on your account. If you call my provider of my website, I call them up. I give them my account number. I give them my name. They say, you have a secret word here that you must know to be able to gain access. And I have to know that secret word to gain access to that. It's not a trivial process and should not be a trivial process to be able to do that. So those of you that did answer, the password recovery process should be trivial. Well, we're asking which of these would not be a best access. And that is definitely one that should not be a best practice. It should not be trivial. It should absolutely not be trivial. A is the correct answer. The 77% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done with that. Well, as many of you know, there is so much information on the Security Plus exam. There are over 200 videos in my 401 series. That's going to be much smaller, by the way, with 501. There'll be longer videos, but not as many of them, but probably just as much content. And this is one of the challenges we have is there's so much content on the Security Plus exam. How in the world are you going to get through knowing network design, cloud computing, protocols, encryption, security controls, risk management, mobile security, all the tools, password policies, knowing details about certificate authorities, all of that, making it happen. I've taken every bit of text, all of the graphics that I've created, all of the charts, all of the diagrams, and I put them all into one single document for you. You could, of course, take notes as you go along, but I've already done it for you. And these are my Security Plus course notes. They are a single document that has in it everything from all of my videos. In fact, I was mentioning to someone today, they're even all numbered with every single video, all of the numbers from the exam objectives. It's all in a single table of contents. There's 40 pages of this content, and it's all in here. All of my diagrams, there's the NAT diagrams, the IP addressing, the port numbers, and it goes on and on and on and on. I took everything. A lot of you have said in the earlier versions of these, hey, I was just taking things I thought were important and putting them in here, and you've said, no, I want everything. So that's what I did. I put everything in here. There's not one thing missing now in all of this. So hopefully that's something that can help you as well. And if this is something you think you might want, you can have a look at professormesser.com/securitycn for the course notes. There's an instant PDF download. For another $15, you can even get it in paper form. There's an actual book I will send to you as full color. Kind of hard to see with the glare of the lights, but a full color book. These are not inexpensive to make because they are full color, but boy, it's nice to have it in a printed form. Have something you just take along with you. There it is. I think it's nice. It's exactly the same as the PDF file, but it's just something that's printed out in a nice binding, nice perfect bound, easy to take around. I like that. Something there, it's your choice. And if you get the printed version, you get the PDF also thrown in for free. So it's another little bonus too if you get that printed version. So it makes it easy. This is one where if you are looking at course notes, might be something that can help you. It's $15. Every dollar goes back to keeping the website up and running. This is what I do full time. So all of these things help me make the 501 series of Security Plus. So this is just going to keep it going. And I cannot thank you enough for your support and your help with what we've done here on this website. It has been remarkable and a heck of a lot of fun. So thank you so much for your ongoing support with that. Find out more at professormesser.com/securitycn. Let's go back to our questions. I've got one for you. A lot of you were saying, I need a hard one. All right. I've got one for you that's a little more hard, a little difficult, a little challenging. Try this one on your noodle. This is, which of these would be the most associated with HMAC SHA-1? I have no idea what you're talking about. What is that? HMAC SHA-1 and being able to have that. I wonder. This is one where I have fortunately, some multiple choice options for you, and they would be probably not as easy as you'd think. A is SSH, B is IPsec, C is SFTP, D is RTP, E is SMB. So your possible answers are SSH, IPsec, SFTP, RTP, and SMB. Which of these would be most associated with HMAC SHA-1? So maybe you know what they are. Maybe you know the answer to that one. If you do, you can go to professormesser.com/QA. Do not answer in the chat room. You want to answer online. I'm going to take a sneak peek, in fact, at how we're doing with this one. One of the challenges on the Security Plus exam is there are a ton of questions like this, and they're not really asking you for a definition. They're not saying define HMAC SHA-1, because maybe you know what that is. Maybe you know what each one of those letters stands for. It's an acronym, so maybe you know what it stands for, but the exam doesn't care really what it stands for. They're more interested in, do you know what the possible use of this technology is? So you not only have to know the possible acronym meaning, you have to know what the letters mean, but then how do you use it? How do you apply it? How is this technology used in security? And something you can really be working on and helping with. This is one where if I start looking at these questions, I try to make them two-step questions so that you have to think about, okay, what's HMAC SHA-1, and then what is the use of it? So there's that second step in the question. Let's see how you guys did with the second step. If I clicked, how do we do? Well, I hit 50%. One question got 50%. Is it the right question? We don't know yet, but I tell you, I try to hit 50%. IPsec is the one that hit 51% now. But we've got a good tie for second. 20% said SSH and 19% said SFTP, effectively a tie for second. And then really a tie for third for RTP and SMB. So we really did this nice step down, like a number 1, a number 2, and a number 3. It could be with these for the HMAC SHA-1. Let's talk about HMAC. HMAC is hash-based message authentication code. It's when you're sending a message and you need to put a hash on it. It's very commonly used to be able to do something to verify that the person who sent this, we received this information. It said it came from James. Did it really come from James? Yes, we can check the integrity of this. It really did come from James because we have James's public key. We can check the hash and see that indeed he signed it or he created that hash with his private key. Everything matches. So we've got at least that idea in there to be able to work through this. We've also got the idea of being able to authenticate and make sure that not only did it come from me with authentication, but everything I put in there, the integrity is there. Everything I wrote when you received it was exactly the way I wrote it. So we've got both of those. The data is integrity is there and in place. Nobody changed it along the way. And the authentication there, we know it came from me. Those two things are pretty important, I would say, when you're sending information back and forth. This is commonly used with a number of network encryption protocols. It's also used, I didn't put it on this slide, it's used a lot with HMIME, or SMIME rather, for secure MIME, which is the secure email type functionality. But you'll also see HMAC SHA-1 used in IPsec. You also see it used in TLS, in certain types of implementations of IPsec, certain implementations of TLS. You'll see it being used there as well. In our list, I didn't give you SMIME in the list. You'll notice the options were SSH, IPsec, SFTP, RTP, and SMB. The only one in this list that would be most associated with HMAC SHA-1 is B, IPsec. The 54% of you that answered IPsec indeed got that one absolutely right. So that was one where we did need to understand the technology. And it looks like half of you, at least half of you, knew of this technology. And now half of you now know what the answer is next time. So you'll be able to go to that next one. If you ever get asked anything about HMAC or HMAC SHA-1 or HMAC in general on your exam, you can immediately think IPsec, TLS, and SMIME. That would be, you'd be set up right there for understanding what the differences would be. Let's do another question. Keep this going. We have, what principle would best describe the protection of a network using multiple security methodologies? Which of these would be describe the protection of a network using multiple security methodologies? Would it be fault tolerance? Would it be least privilege? Would it be asymmetric encryption? Would it be separation of powers? Or would it be defense in depth? One of these would best describe the protection of a network using multiple security methodologies. If you need to get into Socrative and be able to do this, you can easily go there by going to professormesser.com/QA, or if you're looking for the room name for Socrative, it's the same as my domain name, Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER, without the .com, just Professor Messer, all one word. Make sure you spell it right, It's got an O here and it's got an E there. It's sometimes difficult. I've tried to get a lot of different spellings of it so that you could type in any weird spelling of it and it ends up at the right website. Sometimes that's not good. It doesn't train you into doing it right the first time, and then you end up never being able to spell it properly. What principle would be best describe these multiple security methodologies? What would it be? What would it be? Let's see how we did. Let's click how do we do? Well, 73% of us say it's defense in depth. We've got another double digits asymmetric encryption. Be using multiple security methodologies. And then kind of a tie for third, fault tolerance, least privilege, and separation of powers. All of these have sort of this type of protection using multiple things going on, doesn't it? I tried to put a lot of answers in here that could lead you down a particular path. Although most of us did say defense in depth, was that because I led you down that path, or is that really the right answer? Well, the correct answer is indeed defense in depth. That's because with IT security, it's never one thing. You can't say, well, I have a firewall, I'm secure. We have antivirus, I'm secure. We have an IPS, I'm secure. It's never one thing. It's always multiple things. You have to have a firewall. You, of course, have to have a demilitarized zone to put these external servers and make them available to users. There has to be authentication methodologies built in. You have to have an IPS. It's useful to have VPN access if people are coming from somewhere else. You have to be able to access things with antivirus and anti-malware, have that on your systems to protect against that. Everything has a purpose, and you have to layer these things together. That's where we get the term defense in depth. You may hear it even called layered security, because it's exactly what we're doing. We're trying to cover every possible place the bad guys could use to come in and take things away. So indeed, if you did answer defense in depth, got that one absolutely right. It would be E, defense in depth. Fault tolerance is used to be able to have multiple systems available. If one system fails, you can still maintain uptime by having a separate system there. Least privilege is what we would do in an operating system or other systems, because we would like to give somebody rights to perform what they needed, but we don't need to give them more rights than what they need. That opens up the possibility of an attack if you give somebody more access than what's really required. Asymmetric encryption, we've already talked about with public key and private keys. That's what asymmetric encryption does. Has nothing to do with layering on multiple security methodologies. And separation of powers is one where different people in the organization get different functionality. Maybe one person's able to administer one part of it, another person's able to administer another, and that way you're not able to have one person that creates a big security problem across the board. So that's where we get those answers from. Hopefully that's giving you an idea. It's a term we use all the time in network security and IT security is defense in depth. You will see it referred to quite often on security vendors' websites. When we talk about how we're deploying things in our organization, we're talking about using defense in depth. The Security Plus exam is comprehensive. There is so much information on this exam that you have to know. And one of the challenges you're going to have is that you may have never configured an IPsec VPN before. You may have never had to work with public and private key infrastructures. You may have never had to work through these very on-the-job kind of problems dealing with firewalls and spam filters and SNMP. All of those things become a little bit more of a challenge. And when you deal with things like BitLocker, full disk encryption, those are things you're going to want to be able to work through as well. Well, fortunately, my friends at GTS Learning have created a series of labs that do everything for you live. While I've been talking here, I've been setting up the lab on my screen so we could see it. I'm booting up some machines. This is a set of labs that sets up this network. You can see there's 6 devices in this lab. This lab is the application data encryption lab. And I can go through the lab. The first thing we'll do, in fact, on the lab is to do full disk encryption with BitLocker. So they take you through step by step. They give you screenshots. You can pop the screenshots out and see them in full size and being able to work through them. And what I like about these is that these are actual full screen usable Windows systems. It's a virtual environment. There's some labs I've seen online that take you through the lab, but it's like you have to do it in an order. There's a path you have to follow, and if you don't follow that path, the lab doesn't work. It doesn't work that way here. This is a full-blown Windows system. It's loading up a Windows server for you to work on. And you can do what you need to do on this Windows server, or I can go to the music folder or pictures folder and maybe find some videos that I can play. I can do anything. I can go to the hard drive. I can look through all the program files. I can open up anything on here. I don't have to follow the path that's on here. Plus, all of these systems are here and available for me to work on. So if I want to work on another domain controller, if I want to work on a Windows 8 machine, I'll pop over to the Windows 8 machine. I've got, that's another server. There's the Windows 8 machine here. So I've got all of these different machines to work on, and it's so fast to work on them. You know, I'm clicking around here, but it's all remote access. There's no software on my computer to be able to do this. I'm simply clicking around and changing the way things look on the screen, and it's just lightning fast to be able to work through it without me having to do anything. Very nice functionality and a special price if you are interested in these Security Plus labs. If you follow this link, professormesser.com/seclabs, you automatically get the discount. So you can find that for $109 on the website, one that goes very different than the $169 you would pay if you went through the GTS Learning site directly. So have a look at that. That may be something that might interest you. Something, if you don't want to set up a lab yourself, something you can do. ProfessorMesser.com/seclabs. And thanks very much to GTS Learning for supporting what we're doing here at ProfessorMesser.com and on our live study groups. I got another question for you. Let's do a question that is, which of these would be the best course of action when a device has reached MTTF, whatever that is, MTTF. Which of these would be the best course of action when a device has reached MTTF? Would it be purchase a maintenance plan? Would it be to update the repair plan and process? Would it be to budget for a new device? Would it be to use the device on a dedicated network? Or would it be to increase the device uptime? Which of these would be the best course of action when a device has reached MTTF? If you think you know the answer, you can go to the chat room and you can answer what it is by going to professormesser.com/QA. Don't go to the chat room. Don't answer in the chat room. I've got it all ready for you. You can answer that. It pops open the multiple choice questions. You can find the one that makes sense for you, and you can try to answer these as if you're sitting down for the exam and you're having to figure it out yourself. Even these you're not quite sure, you should always take a guess. And I think that's one of the things you should always know, by the way, on the CompTIA exam. You don't get penalized if you take a stab at an answer and it's wrong. They don't subtract points from you. But if you leave it blank, there's no opportunity to get points. So on your multiple choice questions, don't leave any of them blank. If you don't know what it is, take your best guess. Put something in the box. There's a possibility you could get it right. And that possibility might be useful. It might be the difference at the end of the exam between not passing the exam and just squeaking by. And in the case of the Security Plus, Network Plus, A Plus exams, there are no percentages. Nobody knows what you make. You either pass it or you don't pass it. It's a pass-fail. So you just have to get just enough. In fact, I could argue if you get 750 exactly, you've studied exactly the right amount. If you get 751, you studied too much, right? Why'd you study so much? You got a whole point more than what you needed. That's probably bad advice, isn't it? Don't listen to that. Don't ignore what I'm saying there. It's a joke. What is the best course of action when a device has reached mean time to failure? That's what that MTTF is. 53% said budget for a new device. 22% update the repair plan and process. 10% said purchase a maintenance plan. And a tie, 8% here at the bottom. A tie for fourth, use the device on a dedicated network and increase the device uptime. Well, this, of course, is all about recovery, isn't it? We've got a number of recovery things that we need to know. Yes, that was advice for slackers I was given earlier. The chat room is chastising me. One of the things we have to know are these MTTR, MTTF. We have to know what these things are, but more importantly, we have to know what they mean. Mean time to restore is MTTR. Some people call it mean time to recovery. That's probably reasonable to think of it that way as well. This is how long it takes on average to get this thing back up and running, to repair it, to get to a point where we're there. But we've also got this other term, MTTF, mean time to failure. And one of the problems when something fails is you can't really fix it. The implication by using MTTF, mean time to failure, is there is no recovery. Otherwise, it would be a mean time to restore. But mean time to failure means it's gone. That's it. It has failed. It is no more. It is pining for the fjords. There is nothing more you can do here because it has failed. And there's nothing more you can do to kind of recover from that. So when we think about MTTF, look for that failure term and know that when that finally happens, when we're counting down that clock from mean time to failure, when it finally fails, that's it. You're going to have to swap it out for something new because you're not going to be able to recover from that. So when we look at these possible answers, purchasing a maintenance plan, what good is that going to be? If it fails, you're not going to maintain it. Not going to help. You're done. There is no more. It's not there anymore. It's not our best course of action when we're dealing with failure. Purchasing a maintenance plan is throwing money down the drain. You're not going to be able to stop it. You're going to have something new. Updating the repair plan and process. Again, the mean time to failure implies there is no repair. You are not repairing something. That's not going to work for you. Using the device on a dedicated network does nothing for you, by the way. I just threw that in. Not sure why you do that. Where you put it on the network doesn't change how long it takes to fail. And increasing the device uptime. Use it more. That's a bad idea, isn't it? This is going to fail. We're approaching mean time to failure. This could go at any time. What do? We ramp it up. We use it more. No, that's a bad idea. It's not good at all for that. And then finally, we've got the one that 55% of you chose, which was C, budget for a new device. That is your best course of action. When we're getting down to mean time to failure, we're going to need to replace it with a new one. So what you got in the budget, hope you've got some money sitting around because we're going to need to buy a new one. There's no recovering from it. There's no restoring it. There's no fixing it. We need a new one. And in the list of things we had to choose from, that was our best course of action when a device has reached mean time to failure, which is budget for a new device. If you answered C, the 55% of you got that one absolutely right. Now, by the way, if you are watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I'll be glad to give you 1 hour of continuing education unit credit. It's a webinar continuing education unit. If you already have your Security Plus, your A Plus, your Network Plus, this applies to you. You want to go to the top or the bottom of my website where it says Contact Us. Somewhere on the site, it says Contact Us. You click that, it brings up a form. You can put in your name, your email address. You put in that this is the September 2017 Security Plus study group, and the secret word is what you want to put in there that lets me know that you indeed watch this, which is MTTF. That is your secret word of the month. So if you want 1 hour of CEU, go to Contact Us, click, make sure you put in your name, your email address, make sure the email address is right. That's what I'm sending this back to you on. That's pretty important. Some of you don't put in the right email address, then I send the certificate and then it bounces back. That makes me sad. Sometimes I can figure it out. Sometimes I can't. So make sure you double check that very carefully. And then go through and tell me that this is September 2017 Security Plus and that the secret code word, the magic code word, the magic phrase is MTTF. And I'll give you one of those. I think you can, for Security Plus, you can get 10 of those. You can't get all of your CEUs by watching my videos, but at least not yet. Maybe someday we'll be able to do that. What I can do now is give you 10 webinar credits. So you can watch 10 of these. That might be useful. Give you something to do anyway. So hopefully that's something you can use. Let's go to another question. I've got one available. Which of these attacks takes advantage of the cryptographic vulnerabilities in WEP? Which of these attacks takes advantage of the cryptographic vulnerabilities in WEP? Well, we should know, at least you know now, that WEP is bad. WEP has cryptographic vulnerabilities. And we often say that. We don't use WEP because it's been found to be vulnerable cryptographically. Well, what vulnerability is it? Is it an IV attack? Is it a brute force attack? Is it a man-in-the-middle attack? Is it phishing? Or is it privilege escalation? Which of those take advantage of the cryptographic vulnerabilities in WEP? Because we know WEP's bad. But why? Why is WEP bad? That's what you have to know. You have to know this. I say you have to know this. You really should know this. It's in your CompTIA Security Plus exam objectives. You could certainly be asked this on the exam, dealing with WEP and the cryptographic vulnerabilities. The people in the chat room are now trolling me and telling me that they love WEP and they use it all the time and tell all their friends. probably a bad thing. In fact, you probably can't find a device anymore. I think we've pretty much phased out all of the devices that are out there, pretty much all of the devices, 99.9%, that could even perform web encryption. The devices I have on my network, it's not even an option. It's not even there. I couldn't do it if I wanted. I think I have an old Nintendo device that does web. That's all it did. I had one little network set up that all it was set up to do was do web, so that I could plug in this Nintendo. It's important. These are important things, people. It's what I had to do, and I did it. Well, we're a little torn on this one. We've got a tie for first. We have 37% said an IV attack. 36% of you said brute force attack. 18% said man-in-the-middle attack. Then it drops off dramatically there. 5% said privilege escalation. And only 2% said vishing. I was really hoping there'd be more vishing people on this one. WEP's a problem, people. WEP has been a problem for a long time. WEP has been a thing. WEP has very little key management associated with it. This is really old. Maybe you probably don't have a device that still runs WEP, but if you did, you would find that there's no key management. So if you want people on the network with WEP, you have to give everybody the same key, whether they're part of your organization. Maybe if they quit tomorrow, you'll have to change the key. It'll be like the military where you have to have a new key every day. How painful would that be? One of the problems with WEP is there is what WEP calls an initialization vector. It is something that helps with, or ideally helps make the key more randomized. The problem in WEP that we found was that it's a relatively small initialization vector. So although in the world of cryptography, 16,777,216 possible RC4 cipher streams, it seems like that would be a lot, but it turns out that's not a lot at all. Because what we end up doing is reusing these initialization vectors. So if you collect enough frames that have initialization vectors, you'll start to see similarities occur. You'll start to see patterns emerge, and it becomes very, very easy now to start breaking down the encryption to make it very easy to crack. And that's why you can break into a network with WEP. On a laptop, you can do it in seconds. On your iPhone, you can do it in seconds. And these days, very easy to do this. The way the bad guys do this is they start injecting frames that drop people off the network, and they get back on the network and they use these initialization vector frames to be able to do that. They're included in the connection back into this. And because they get more IVs, more initialization vectors in these frames coming by, they're able to collect more of them. They're able to find the patterns and very easily determine what the functionality is associated with that. And that's why we don't use WEP. It's painfully easy to be able to get into a WEP network. If you scan the networks in your area and you find one with WEP, there's a problem there. You will still find some, by the way. If you go to a city, you go to a place with a lot of access points, you will eventually find one. There are a few out there. There were a couple in my neighborhood recently. They're gone now, I think. I ran a scan recently to do some things on Security Plus on the new 501 content, and I was finding all kinds of interesting things that I can't now share with you. But we had to fix those and tell my neighbors, you should not be doing that. So if we look at which of the attacks takes advantage of the cryptographic vulnerabilities in WEP, it would not be brute force. In fact, brute force attack it's not really a cryptographic vulnerability. It is a way to attack a system, and a brute force attack is really the only thing you would use with WPA2, because there is no cryptographic vulnerability with WPA2. So the only thing you can do is just guess the password, guess the passphrase. That's all you got, is to try to guess it. And if they're using 802.1x, forget it. You know, you've got now a username and passwords, and it's going to lock itself out. That's a little bit more of a problem. So WPA2, pretty darn secure. Man-in-the-middle attack does not apply here, even though the WEP encryption easy to crack. It's actually, and while it's in use, the encryption works pretty well. You're not able to do a man-in-the-middle attack. That was not the cryptographic vulnerability in WEP we were going after. Privilege escalation is a term you use when you attack a system and you gain elevated access. So if you're a regular user, you type in a few things, you run a few attacks against it, and now suddenly you have root access or administrator access. That's privilege escalation. And then you have finally vishing, which is voice phishing. It's using the phone to gather information, personal information from someone. It has nothing to do with wireless at all. So the correct answer, 39% of you answered an IV attack. That indeed is the correct answer. If you answered A, you got that one absolutely right. Well done with that. One of the things that people ask all the time is, what do I need to know before I go into the Security Plus exam? CompTIA has given you everything you need for absolutely free. It is the CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you have a copy of these exam objectives. They detail every single topic you need to know. They tell you exactly what percentage of these topics will be covered on the exam. And now you'll be able to know if you need to walk into the exam, you know everything, you can walk right in, or you might look at this list and say, I need to push my exam out maybe another week or two. This is something that will give you that barometer. It will give you that feedback and let you know, are you ready to take the exam or not? You can go to find these objectives. ProfessorMesser.com/objectives will redirect you over to the CompTIA website, or just go to Google, type in the Google machine, CompTIA exam objectives, and download and use these as your checklist. Get the ones for the version of the exam you're taking. If you go to the Security Plus, you'll have the choice. Do I download the SY0401 or the SY0501? Right now, you would download the SY0401. That's the only exam available. And it's only real content you have to study from. And you've got, as I mentioned, about 10 months from now to be able to finish that exam. Some of you want to take the new version. Okay, well, you're going to need to find some content. Make sure you get the version of the exam objectives that's right for you. That becomes pretty important, too, to have that there. Well, the Security Plus study group is one I do every month. Next month, we're doing this Security Plus study group on October the 18th. We're shotgunning this. Make sure to go through all of these. Make sure you go through all of these as well. And if you're ever wondering what we're doing next, what is the next thing coming up, you can always go to ProfessorMesser.com/calendar and being able to work through there. Have those pieces available. In fact, we've got all of the things we talked about today. Look at my course notes, ProfessorMesser.com/SecurityCN. Stands for Security Course Notes. How easy. Of course, you can always follow us on Twitter, ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube/Twitter/Facebook. Just type in ProfessorMesser.com/ the social media thing you want to go to, /Instagram, /Twitter, /Facebook, /YouTube, /whatever it is. Don't forget about the voucher discounts at ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. And of course, my thanks to GTS Learning, the special pricing you can get for the GTS Learning Live Labs at ProfessorMesser.com/SecLabs. And of course, thanks to you. I wouldn't be able to do these live streams and have interactive Q&A if there was no one to interact with. Thank you, folks in the chat room. Thank you for joining us online. Thank you for watching the replays as well. Thank you for your feedback. Thanks for sending me those notes. Always like to be able to answer you and see what's going on. Always nice to know that you're watching, and I get some great recommendations from you. You're just making all of this better as we go along. Thank you for that. I've got much more in the second half. Stick around. We've got live Q&A coming up. I'm going to open up the phone lines. Otherwise, I will see you next time on the Professor Messer Security Plus Study Group. Thanks, everyone. I've got phone lines to get going. Phone lines. I'll give you the number in just a moment. The phone lines. Start the show. Whoops. Go home. My shows. Start a show. Host a show. Start it. There's all these things to type, all these buttons to push, all these things to do. Now I call in. I thought you were going to call in, but I have to call in as well. My call in is all done in the cloud. So I have to call into the cloud. One of these days I should do a show about how I do a show. So many moving parts. So what happens next? Somebody say something? I think he does. I think he says something. Oh, it's beeping. It's making a noise. It's going to say something in a second. Oh, see, there we go.
Thank you for calling.
Well, you're welcome. I need to type in this right here and
enter your 6-digit PIN number.
Well, I think that's redundant, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Welcome.
Welcome. See, that's what we're shooting for, is the welcome. And that welcome means that you could call in. You could call in. I'm also looking in the chat room for questions. So you can go to professormesser.com/live, and I'll be able to take questions from the chat room. Also, you can call in. In the United States, call in toll-free 855-785-RJ45. You can also Skype in absolutely free because it's a toll-free number. So you can Skype in from anywhere in the world for no Skype minutes by putting a +1 at the beginning, 855-785-7545 if you want to. There was a lot going on with security this week. A lot of questions, people talking about Equifax here in the United States. Equifax announced an enormous breach. A lot of people no longer working at Equifax because of that. The media completely taking that particular issue and completely messing that one up. If I had to give anybody advice from a security perspective, it's stay focused. Ignore the media. One of the things the media doesn't do very well, and I'm really talking about trade media here. I'm not talking about the CNNs of the world, although this does apply to them as well. But even our trade media, and I mean people who are IT organizations that do media, they never get it right, do they? There's always important details that they twist or they leave out, or it's all about clicks. Anyway, we all know that media is about trying to get people to read your articles. It's not necessarily about being as accurate as possible. And that's one of the problems we had with this Equifax breach, is that a lot of stories came out that were actually not correct. They were completely wrong in some cases. And in many cases, we're ignoring the facts of what was going on, especially with something this important with Equifax, which is one of the credit organizations. They collect personal information on everybody in the country and even around the world in some cases. And they hold a lot of important information. And a security breach there is pretty important to know. So what did they do? They talked about things that had nothing to do with the breach, and in some cases, things that were completely incorrect. As a security person, stay focused. What we did find out about the breach after the fact, once they got all of their clickbait articles out of the way, is that Equifax did not perform a patch. They didn't perform a security update to a piece of software that was on their web servers. And the bad guys found that particular piece of software was vulnerable, took advantage of the vulnerability, and gained access to it. It was a pretty simple, in the big scheme of things, pretty simple attack. Should somebody have performed the patch of that software? Yeah. It had been unpatched for months, and they were able to take advantage of it. It's one of those things we always say in the Security Plus exam objectives. I think I may not have mentioned it in this study group. It was in the last study group, but you always have to keep your updated with the latest patches. Make sure that you have the latest patches installed. And the reason we say that over and over and over again isn't just so we keep things fresh and new. It's because it stops people from doing what happened with Equifax. So that's part of a problem. And now what you're going to find, of course, and it's already happening, is you're seeing websites that have spam and websites that have been taken over and are popping up messages about your Equifax data. You're getting emails already from the scammers that say, call us now to stop your Equifax data from getting out. Now the bad guys are taking advantage. The ones who had nothing to do with this whole event are now taking advantage of the event, just like anything else. There will be people taking advantage of the hurricanes that have come through the United States and come through now Puerto Rico today, which was just creamed with a Category 4, almost a Category 5 today. As we're speaking, there will be people trying to take advantage of these situations. So make sure you stay focused. That's my watchword for today. Don't listen to people telling you about what the CSOs at different companies were doing in college, which have nothing to do with anything. Don't have them tell you about what they're doing on the stock market, which has nothing to do with anything. Focus on the security piece. That's a real challenge with this, especially this Equifax problem. Let's go to the phones where we can talk about Equifax or anything else. I've got the 561 area code talking about Florida and hurricanes. We'll go to you, 561. What's your name?
Hi, Professor Messer. My name is Ed, and I'm calling from Miami.
You are indeed, sir. How'd you fare down there?
Oh, lost power for one day. I live in Miami Lakes, so our power was underground, and it wasn't too bad here.
I have my Mrs. Professor Messer hails from Hialeah. It's 78th Terrace, and went to school just around the corner from there. And I used to live in Miami Lakes, or really just outside of there, and Miramar and Pembroke Pines. So I miss it down there sometimes. I really miss the food.
Well, it's nice talking to you. Also, I'm calling about the Equifax data breach, actually. And I was looking at possible countermeasures to prevent the attack. And obviously, the first one that you've already mentioned was the patching that they didn't do.
Right.
The other countermeasures, and I don't know if you would agree with me. Maybe it'd be interesting to see what you think about this. But in addition to the patching, a DLP, for instance, a data loss prevention software.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. It's not necessarily that they got in, but they were able to get something out. They were able to exfiltrate that user data. So we can assume, we don't know the details of this, and we may never know the details of their infrastructure. I have met with the security folks at Equifax in a professional mode before in a meeting, and found them to be, as you would expect, incredibly competent. They were very knowledgeable people in dealing with security. You're not talking about a bunch of guys running around banging into each other and trying to figure out how the keyboard works. These are well-trained security professionals. But how was somebody able to, we know how somebody now was able to get in. How did they miss that part on the patch management? And then secondly, to your point, they were able to gather up a bunch of information. How did they get it out? And when they got it out, were there no methods in place to be able to find it? This is one of the challenges we have in IT security in general, is that we tend to create this very strong, very hard wrapper around the outside. But once you get on the inside, it's all very soft and squishy for the most part. It's one of the biggest challenges we have in IT security, is managing the inside of the network, because there's very few security pieces in place. A lot of companies I've worked with before, or have been a customer of before, things like, a good example is LastPass. LastPass found somebody who got into their systems and was able to start noticing an uptick of data that was being sent out, and they were able to stop it because they had systems in place monitoring it. Did Equifax not have systems in place monitoring these things? Did they not, were the things that they were looking at the wrong things, or did the bad guys just know how to get around those monitoring systems and get it out some other way? We may not ever know, because Equifax may not be able to share that information. I have a feeling, because of the scope of this, that we will get a much larger document. I would imagine, if I was Equifax, that they have brought in one of the Mandiant type security consulting arms, one of those big companies that what they do is they parachute in after the fact and reconstruct everything that happened, and they create these very big reports for, of course, the management of the company, but they also create a report that can be made public to the shareholders as well, because we want to know what really went on there and how can we prevent this from happening to our own network. Maybe some good will come out of this.
So what you're suggesting then is possibly the attacker throttled down the exfiltration of the data so it did not set off an alarm.
Maybe, or maybe there were no alarms in general. Maybe the watch guard will check off on his clipboard, are you able to come in the door? Yep. But the watch guard doesn't watch somebody walking out the door with a flat screen television. That's not his job. So maybe they didn't have anybody watching it. Or maybe, to your point, they were able to turn it down just low enough so that the volume wasn't very loud and they got it out another way. Or did they use a different method? Were they able to encrypt the data or create a VPN? Were they able to, from the inside, have it removed in a different way? We don't know yet. It's going to be very interesting to see what comes of this.
And another point is, what about encryption? If the data was encrypted at rest, would that data not be useful to them once they exfiltrated it?
It probably would be, but it's It's awful unusual. It seems like it would be obvious that data like this would be encrypted when it is stored on a server. But one of the problems that you have in an environment like Equifax, where they have so much data and it has to be retrieved from all of these systems as quickly as possible, if you encrypt the data and store it in the database, you're not able to index it. You're not able to search through it very easily. It becomes less functional to have it in that form. And so a lot of organizations say, we aren't going to encrypt it in the database. Instead, we'll put the security in front of the database, and that's where we'll do the secure part of it. I'm speculating here completely on what's going on at Equifax because I have zero information. I have no knowledge. I don't know anybody who works there. Haven't heard anything. I only know what I know by reading what everybody else has read. But that tends to be, as someone who has gone around to many organizations and talked to them specifically about security, that tends to be what they do. Are there cases where people are encrypting in a database? Absolutely. I wish more people were, but there are some very obvious and very good functional reasons why you would not want to encrypt at rest with this type of data.
I see. And then one last question, and I'm not sure which one would be the best. Would a WAF or an IPS also help? And how is the difference between the two types of security appliances would work?
I was thinking about this as well, because that's where I would have, in my mind, where the first line of defense would be an intrusion prevention system, an IPS. IPSs generally sit between you and the internet. There's some that people use them internally, but the most common usage is between you and the internet. And an intrusion prevention system is very good as long as you're updating its signatures at being able to track vulnerabilities against applications and operating systems. Part of the problem, though, is an IPS is a network-based system. It is looking at packets and frames that are coming through and examining what's inside of those frames to see if some of that information matches a known attack against a particular vulnerability. So already we have a problem that an IPS will only identify known attacks for the most part. There's some IPSs that can do a little bit of extra work to kind of find things that go outside the scope of that. But for the most part, the reason IPSs run at the speed they run today is there's some very known signatures they're looking for. So if bad guys are able to take advantage of the vulnerability using something that is unknown, they will pass right by an intrusion prevention system. The other problem you have, and I'm not sure which one of these applies to this particular vulnerability, but there are a number of application vulnerabilities that you just can't see going across the network. You just can't identify it with a strong enough signature to be able to use that in an IPS. For this vulnerability, I've just not done the research to know, is this something you can see in an IPS or is it not? That'll be the next thing I do, kind of looking into this and figuring out these pieces. But currently, it's something IPS could have prevented if an IPS was smart enough to know about this particular kind of vulnerability, and the bad guys used a very, very well-known way to access that particular vulnerability. A WAF might have also helped as well. A web application firewall, not really a firewall, it's sort of a firewall, but it's a different animal than the traditional network-based firewall that we're all accustomed to seeing. It's kind of an odd thing we did with the names there. A web application firewall is checking the input when people type things into a form. So if you have something on your page, putting your name, your address, credit card number, birth date, social security number, it's doing validation checks on there. If you put something in the address field that is not an address, it's going to identify it and not prevent that input from going into the application. So it's one of those that could have helped as well if the vulnerability they took advantage of was one that dealt with user input. It may not have been. And I'm just haven't done the research on the exact vulnerability yet, other than to know it's related to a particular service that is an Adobe service that deals with Java and the way it works with applications. I've not even gotten into the details of that quite yet either, but maybe either one of those could have helped.
So what you're saying is without knowing the attack vector, it would be hard to know what type of countermeasure would have worked the best.
Yeah, at least at this point, we know the vector because we know what they went after. We know the vulnerability they went after because that was made public. We just don't know how they took advantage of the vulnerability. We don't know if they used an application or a system they built themselves. I don't even know if this vulnerability was even that difficult to circumvent. So that would be something too to find out. We just don't know yet. And I'm going to do a little more research on it too because this story's not over yet. It's already a weird story. And one thing that's obvious with weird stories is they just get weirder as time goes on. So we're going to find out just how weird this one's going to get.
Well, thank you, Professor Messer, for taking my call.
I appreciate it, Ed. Take care. This is one of the challenges with security. And we mentioned earlier, defense in depth. You know, we talked about 3 or 4 different defensive measures that you need. All of those have to be in place and they all have to be working. Your patch management has to be working. Your intrusion prevention system has to be working and getting updated signatures. Your web application firewall has to be configured properly and it has to be working. If any of those things stop working, we have a little bit more of a problem there to deal with. Let's go to the 813 area code. Thanks for calling and thanks for holding. Caller, what's your name?
Rosemary.
Hello, Rosemary. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
What would be the best advice for someone that is completely knowledgeable and has no clue what we're doing in terms of IT? I just took classes in N Plus and Security Plus, and quite honestly, I'm more confused now than when I started. It was a crash course for a week, but because I took it in the evening, it was two weeks long. What can I do to get some information or learning tool to put it down to basically IT and Security Plus for dummies?
It's well, one thing you will find is if you are in information technology and you have a very good grasp on all of the things you're working with, then you really have no idea what you're doing. Because we really, if you're in IT, it's a constant challenge to keep up with this. Nobody can know everything. I'll give you an example. I just a few years ago, I transitioned into doing this full time. But before that, for about 7 years, almost 7 years, before that, I worked as a systems engineer for a next generation firewall company. And as a systems engineer, my responsibility was to know everything about everything in the way this product operated. This was a next generation firewall with the ability to do intrusion prevention and content filtering and VPNs and in the cloud malware detection and application identification and integration into Active Direct. Just went on and on and on and on. Nobody can know everything. And as somebody who worked there for 7 years, I knew the bulk of what this product did, but nobody knew everything about what this product did because it's impossible to know everything. And so there was constant training. I went to a training class for a week. About every 6 months, I was in a week training class, constantly getting updated. It's going to be this way in IT no matter what you do. If you work with servers, operating systems, networking, security, databases, it doesn't matter. You're never going to know everything. You're never going to be completely comfortable. This will be something that's very you'll find the uncomfortability something very normal, like a warm blanket that you'll put around you. Like, okay, I must be doing okay because I'm really not quite sure how that worked. It's just something that's common because it's so complex what's happening underneath. And you'll gather and have a whole group of people that you'll be able to pull from. If somebody asks, one of the things I knew a lot in my system was how to do things with the API. So if somebody wanted to know programmatically, how do I get into this firewall and do this, they would call me. If I wanted to know more about configuring something very specific with BGP, I had somebody I would call who is the expert in BGP. So that's one of the things you'll run into. When you talk about these certifications, though, there's nobody to pull from. You can't bring somebody in on your exam to sit with you and take the Network Plus and Security Plus and all of these things. The things that I can really recommend to you the most are to, number one, make sure you have a good book. If you can, get 2 good books because one book may say it one way and another book may say it another. Also get and watch some good videos. You can watch my videos and maybe watch some other videos because there's a difference in how you learn when you're reading from a book than how you learn than if you're watching a video. It may even be the exact same content, but one of those will teach it to you in a way that somehow registers differently in your brain. So don't focus on one single medium. Make sure that you use different types of training materials, even if they cover some of the same topics. The other thing I'll mention, and this is the one that works best for me, is I need to get as much hands-on as possible. There's something about that muscle memory of typing in the trace route command and looking at the results of the trace route command and really understanding it that in my mind I start figuring it out. It's really more of a fear of the unknown is what I found in my career, is that whenever I've been afraid of something, it's just been because I didn't spend the time to understand it. And I would go to training, I'd spend an hour doing it, and I'd say, that's it? I was worried about that. All I did was spend an hour. I really understand it now. I know what it's telling me. So now I've got a better feeling for that. And I'm a little more comfortable when it deals with that particular topic. Get as much hands-on as you can. The CompTIA exam objectives give you a very nice checklist. So if you're trying to figure out where do I even start, just start at the beginning. Go down the checklist. Do I understand that topic? Have I done hands-on with that topic? Do I really understand what they're saying when they ask me of that in the exam objectives? Let me read it in the book. Maybe read it in the other book. Let me watch it in a video. Let me try to do some hands-on and look at it. And if I can do all of those things and put them all together, I think that helps as well.
And that's my and I don't expect to know everything. I get that part. This is the situation. I'm trying to get enough knowledge base to take both the exams, and I feel more lost now, like I said, than when I started, as to trying to get a basic grasp of what I need to have to pass the exam. And like yourself, I'm a kinesthetic learner. I do auditory and hands-on. I need both to learn. And if I don't have a very good auditory teacher, sort of, basically the teacher just read from the book word for word, that didn't help me. That actually kind of shut me down, because it's a very dry material. Let's face it, it's very dry, and you need somebody to make it a little bit more real life examples, and that's one of the things I didn't get a lot of. And I'm trying my darndest to try to get my hands on by asking people, hey, I'll even work for free just so I could get a basis of what's going on. I'm, like I said, I'm fairly intelligent, and I feel so stupid right now because I have no clue what's going on. So I'm looking for something that I could get, like I said, the written material to give me some basis. And I was told about you by other people to look at your videos to kind of give me a better grasp. But I'm here in Lakeland, Florida, and I'm having a darndest time trying to get more hands-on, like I said, even if it's for free, just so I could pass the test and get what I need to get, the real-life work experience, which you're right. IT is the same like medical and everything else. It's an ongoing learning process, and I get that.
So what are you using now as your study materials?
The book they gave us at the school, they made their own. I think it's their own CompTIA. I think it's from CompTIA. And I'm just trying to get a grasp for what's online as well, in between everything else, working and homeschooling my daughter and every other thing that's going on.
I would recommend getting a second book. It sounds kind of weird that you would need a second book for this, but this is, from what I've seen, books are very different. You may even want to go out to Amazon. And of course, on Amazon, you can start reading the books. They have a chapter or so available that you can read through it. Different books have different voices. They're written in different ways. And I found that some books really appeal to me as a reader, and other books don't. And sometimes it doesn't match what the popular opinion is of those books either. Some books people say, this is the one you need. And I read through it, I'm like, this is horrible. And then I read another book and think, okay, this is more my speed. That's one of the things I tell people all the time, and I recommend on my site, are the GTS learning books, because they're written very succinctly, directly to the objectives. And a lot of the other books in the industry, for some reason, go well outside the scope of the objectives, which isn't necessarily bad, but we're trying to get a certification here, and I don't have time to kind of go off the beaten path to figure those pieces out. So maybe look at another book to see what they do. CompTIA as an organization does not publish their own books. They rely on third parties to do that. So there's a lot of different books out there that are written a lot of different ways, and you may want to consider that. The other thing I consider is watch the videos. My videos are very focused on topics, whether they're my videos or others. That's another way to learn. And as you mentioned, hands-on's really good. The live labs that I recommended in my study group, I don't just recommend because GTS Learning has them and I like the folks at GTS Learning, but I've used these labs myself. I go into the labs and I take screenshots and pull them into the courses that I do. I'll do some real-time stuff with them to be able to step through problems. So if you're trying to figure out how does this encryption with public-private key really work, they take you through that process. And they have you work through that private and public key encryption and the digital signatures. And after doing that, you can get a better feeling for what's going on. I think just expand what you're doing. Take the concept of what you're working on and focus on maybe some live labs, a different kind of book. Get some videos under your belt. Try just the first set of topics in the first set of objectives in the Security Plus. Focus on those, get them down completely, and see if you can find the right combination that works for you.
Okay, and you said look for what in Security Plus, so I could download that?
The book I like is the GTS Learning book. If you go to my Security Plus page on my website, I've got a list of the GTS Learning books. Also, there's a under the Security Plus menu, I've got a list of the things that I recommend because I've used them and I know the people that wrote them and I talk to the people that produce them. So I'm very comfortable with those products and I like them. And I've got a list on my side of what those are.
No, but you said something about the CompTIA, I think, learning objectives or something. What was that again?
Go to ProfessorMesser.com/objectives. CompTIA lists out every single thing you need to know for the exam. And it's a great checklist. And you can start crossing things out.
And they use that for both Security Plus and N Plus, correct?
There's a Security Plus exam objectives. There's a separate Network Plus exam objectives. And CompTIA stays very close to these exam objectives for the exam. You don't have to study anything that's outside the scope of these objectives, and you need to know everything that's on them. And if you know everything that's on that list of exam objectives, you're going to pass your exam. There's just no question.
That's exactly what I'm looking for.
They stay that tight to the list of objectives.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Good luck, Rosemary.
Thank you, everybody, for your feedbacks on the chat line. Thank you.
That's nice. Thanks, chat room. Appreciate it, Rosemary. Thanks for calling.
Okay. Bye-bye.
It's one of the challenges is everybody's a little different. So I mentioned all of these things. Try this, try this, try this, try this. There's everybody works a different way. Everybody's brain is built a different way. Everybody learns differently with different things. Ironically, I like to read to be able to do a certification exam. And then once I've read, I go to the hands-on. Oddly, I don't do much video. I think a lot of the exams I've taken recently, though, have been some of these very weird esoteric exams, and there is no video. Maybe that's what it is. And being able to work through it and have those there. Back to the calls. The 661 area code. You've been holding a long time. Thank you, caller. What's your name? 661. Are you there, caller? I can't hear you. I don't hear you. You're potted up. I hear your name. Oh, I don't see you coming in there. Don't hear a thing. You've been holding for a while. I'm going to sit right here and see if you can figure out what's going on with that. Maybe I'm muted. Maybe I'm not muted. Maybe I'm talking to myself. Maybe there's not really anyone there. But you're there. I'm going to stick you back in the queue. You can try that out. If you're calling through Skype, you can always call on the Skype number. There's that Skype testing service with the nice lady that can do that. Oh, you're calling back. So maybe you're back on the phone. Go back to 661. Are you there, caller?
Hi.
Hey,
Matt, how you doing?
I hear you now. Hi, what's your name?
Matt.
Hey, Matt. Thanks.
How's it going?
I'm so good. Thank you for calling. What can we do for you?
I'm going to take the Security Plus exam tomorrow. And I wanted to thank you for your study material. I went through it over the last days, and I kind of feel a little more confident now that I did it. So
Fantastic.
I wanted to
What is
thank
your
you.
what's your comfort level going in? How are you feeling the day before?
I don't know. Until yesterday, I was a little more confident. As of right now, I don't know. It's kind of like, random. You don't know what kind of questions you might get.
Well, it's true. If somebody said to me, I got 24 hours to take this exam, what do I do? My normal response will be get the exam objectives, and that's your final checklist. Start going through that list and crossing out the things you know relatively well. But if anything jumps out at you at that list, that's your topics you should be cramming on 24 hours before. Hopefully that's something you've been able to take advantage of.
Yeah, that's kind of the kind of work I'm doing over the last 2 or 3 days because, you don't have time to review everything thoroughly, So I thought that would be the best way for me to check.
I agree. There's people that will ask me, hey, I've got 2 hours before I walk in my exam. What can I do? I'm like, I can't help you 2 hours before, brother. You need to call me before that. But 24 hours before, you've got some options.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'd love to know how it turns out. Let us know how your sort of Security Plus exam goes. Don't tell us what's on the exam, but I'd love to know after the fact. Send us a note or call in next month and let us know what the results were. We'll find out. Maybe it will help someone else as well.
Sure, I will keep you posted. After the exam, I'm going to see Roger Waters. So either way, it'll be a great day for me. So.
Nice. It certainly will. And tell us how that turns out. I'd love to know.
Yeah.
Best of luck, sir. I hope it goes well for you.
I hope so, too. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. That's nice. You can't beat that. Go see a nice concert. So you're good to go either way. Hopefully they're serving a nice adult beverage at the concert. Be able to work through that. In the chat room, yes, you are correct. I think I can drop that one. If I dropped you can always call back and get those there. There is, as I mentioned, the Security Plus exam. The new one doesn't come out till the 25th of next month. So there's nothing yet available. I will have new 501 content available probably shortly after that. I'll start trickling out the videos right after that and have those in there. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes to get the new videos going. I'm creating content, I'm heads down. The hurricane kind of threw things off a little bit, but we're back on target, and I'm heads down and creating the content. This is going to be a good course, by the way. A lot of you have said in the existing course that there's too many videos and they're too short. I kind of agree with that. I'm now making the videos more traditionally what you've seen in the A+ and the Network Plus course, where we're taking a single topic and spreading it across all of those. In fact, the exam objectives are written very differently this time. They lend themselves to being this, but they will not be extremely long videos. I will stick to my 10 to 15 minute time frame. Some of them may get split up into multiple videos, so we can make them just a bite-sized version of those. But it's going to be really good. There's a lot of good practical real-world things that go right into these videos now, and I've been able to extend out the real-world content. Why are you learning this? What good is it to know this thing? Fortunately, the Security Plus exam probably certainly more than the A+. The A+ exam tends to get dated very quickly because that's the nature of operating systems and hardware, is that world moves so quickly. Networking moves a little bit slower. So the Ethernet that we were using 3 years ago is pretty much the Ethernet we're using today. But we do also, with security, have a number of new things that have come out in the last 3 years. And so there's a number of new topics associated with that as well. Half the exam is new. It's all brand new. So I'm writing from scratch to create brand new content, which actually I think works better for you because I end up putting more of a real world spin on why are you learning this content? Why is it useful to know this? Well, because here's a breach that happened. because they didn't do this. That's immediate feedback. Oh, I see. That's my job. If I don't do this, got it. I understand completely. Sometimes it helps. Let's go to the 267 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hey, how you doing, Professor Messer? My name is Antoine.
Hey, thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
I just had a quick question. You said basically 10 months from today we would have to take the 401.
Yeah, the 401 will be retired in July of 2018. So you've got 10 months. If you started studying today for the SY0 401, you've got about 9 to 10 months before that exam disappears.
Okay, so when I go about taking the 401, because I've been studying for roughly about 2 weeks now, and I'm pretty confident, so I would just have to order the 401 test when I actually go through the CompTIA site to order the test?
Exactly,
because it's just going to be randomized.
Next month, they will introduce the 501 exam. And so for about a 9-month period, there's an overlap where you could take either one. And you get to choose which one you want to take. They just don't throw a random one at you.
Okay, great.
And they do that for people like you. You've already been studying for a little bit. You've got the exam objectives. You've purchased study materials. Your book is a 401 book. The videos you're watching are 401 videos. Everything you're using is around the 401 exam. It would be awful if next month they just cut it off and you can't take the 401 anymore and you got to take the 501. Except in the 501, we've half the content's brand new, and you're going to have to buy a new book, and you're going to have to get new videos. So they understand that. And so what they do is they introduce a new version, and then traditionally for about 6 to 9 months after that is an overlap period so that people can transition and finish up their studies on one, and the people that haven't started studying can transition into the new one, and it makes it pretty seamless for most everybody.
Okay, well, that was my only question. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for your videos. I really appreciate it, sir.
You're very welcome, sir. Thanks for calling. That's one thing that I kind of like about CompTIA. As someone who creates CompTIA content, it makes it easy for people to transition into the new one, and that was well thought out. CompTIA, they've done this for a long time. They've gotten used to the way it works. They know it works for people, and it's just a well-engineered process that they have there. And it's well-engineered for me, too, because I can create content and get things out to people, and I don't have to have a drop-dead date. The second that Security Plus 501 comes out, I probably have course notes, but not every video will be created because it takes a long time to produce videos, especially in a course like this. And my videos are very comprehensive, so very, very specific on how I create these videos. But I'll be getting them out very, very quickly. What I tend to do, just for those of you interested, or whether you're not interested because you're stuck here anyway, is that I create all of the video content first. So if there are 100 videos, 150, probably be more than that on this one, 150 videos, let's say, I create all 150 videos first. I create the content for the video first. Before we even shoot a frame of video, before anything is saved to disk, I go ahead and I create the video content. And then, since I already have the content, I have my staff creating the course notes contents behind the scenes. So even though I've not shot one video yet, I've still got tons of content available now, and we're already creating some of the materials you'll be able to use for that. And then actually, the process of shooting the video and editing and putting it online is really very simple, relatively speaking. It's not simple, but relative to the actual creation of the content, that's the hardest part. It's the most time-consuming part. It's the part where I really spend a lot of time trying to figure out, why are you learning this topic? How can I show you this topic in a way that makes sense? How can I show you a practical use of how this security topic's being used in the world? And then now I go to the next topic. So I'm going through all of those and really laying it out in my Professor Messer format. I have a very standard format that I hope gets across the specifics of what we're trying to learn. And once I get through all of those videos, then I finally shoot video. So you will see these gaps where there will be nothing happening that you can see, but behind the scenes is tons of activity. It's like the sun comes up and I'm writing, I'm putting content in. The sun goes down, I'm putting content in. I'm stopping to eat and then back to putting content in because it's just a constant churn. And then I shoot a bunch of videos and then that's good for 3 years. And then the process starts over again. So in the meantime, there's a Network Plus that'll be after that. And there's an A Plus that'll be after that. And there's another project that comes after that. So we're constantly refining. We're constantly making it better. We're constantly changing the way that it works. We're constantly taking your feedback. A lot of you have said, for example, the Security Plus was the first one I did this to, is the course notes, the book and the PDF have every single bit of text that are, other than the jokes and things I put in, the weird non sequiturs I put in my videos, but it has all of the text from all of the videos. So what I started with on my Network Plus actually is I put in the things that I think were the most important. And you gave me feedback and said, everything's important. There is no most important. I want every bit of text from every video. It's what you pounded into my head. And so I actually went back. My course notes for Network Plus were 15 pages long, maybe even less than that. And I went back to Network Plus and I put in, I put in every bit of text from every single video, every graphic, every chart, every diagram, and it turned into a 65-page document. So that's a good example of what I think are the most important things versus putting everything. Because what you said is, I will determine what the most important part is. You need to give me everything. And so that's what we do now, is we just give you everything. I hand it over and say, here you go. There's everything. You now figure out what the most important parts are for you. And that's worked out much better. Somebody sent me a note today and said, I just saw online, these are 65-page Network Plus course notes. I thought they were smaller. People said they didn't have everything in there. I had to tell them, yeah, well, now you told me. You said very clearly, stop doing that. Put everything in there. So I did. So we're going to keep doing that. We also got some interesting things planned on the website to make the learning process easier. A lot of you have said, I want some things other than videos to help me through understanding these topics. So we're going to be doing that as well. So be looking out for, there's also other changes I'm planning on the website. I'd love for it to look different and be able to move around differently on the site. So we're working on some of those too. You haven't seen it, but while this last 3 weeks of hurricanes and everything else has gone on, I lifted the website off of a server architecture in place. I created a brand new set of servers and lowered it down onto that. So it was a forklift upgrade from those servers onto the new ones. And we're running now 4 times faster. I've implemented things onto the website I could not implement before because my older architecture would not allow it. Interestingly enough, nobody's actually mentioned this to me, but for the last week, every page on my website has been encrypted. So the whole site now runs in HTTPS. Whether you put it in or not, you end up on my site in an encrypted page. Partly because Google is moving people to that. If anything on your page requires any user input, they are almost requiring you to encrypt those pages. And on my site, you can put in a link to put to sign up for newsletters on my site. Every page has that. And so effectively every page needed to be encrypted for Google to keep me at the same level in the Google machine. This is kind of a behind the scenes, inside baseball kind of stuff. I may be boring some of you with this, but that's sort of the business side of running a website, is knowing what Google is looking for and making sure you're doing things that make Google happy so that they leave you in the Google machine, because you don't want to be out of the Google machine. So my Google juice remains high, but I clicked that button thinking, is it going to work? I spent weeks transitioning over to this new system. The only way to test it was to put actual user data through it. Is it going to work? Let's find out. I turned it on, and by golly, it worked. Could not be happier. So now everything on my site is encrypted. From a Security Plus perspective, there's a lot of interesting things that happen there with website certificates, load balancers, reverse proxies. That's a whole, I should document that just so you can see what we're doing with these. And some of the decisions that I made regarding website certificates were interesting as well. And I don't know that I've even finalized what I'm doing with website certificates yet, but it's all very interesting the way it turned out. Anyway, what I mean is that This now extends my functionality of the website. I'm able to do many more things that I was not able to do in the past. And I'm excited about it. There's some very interesting things that will be happening. Right now, my focus is to give you more Security Plus content. And there will be some really, really good Security Plus 501 videos coming out. I say every time I make a new course, this is the best course ever. And this is going to be the best course ever. They just keep getting, I try to make them better and better every time. And I'm really liking the way this one's turning out. We just have to see finally when we get it out there, if you like it or not. We're going to find out. If you don't like it, I'm in trouble. Well, maybe I can raise cows. Well, I'll do something outside. I'll work in a nursery. I've always said if I wasn't going to do anything with technology, go outside. And this is the person you just heard in the pre-show say he lost internet for 2 days and nearly lost his mind. Maybe that's not a good idea. Well, if I'm on the cow, if I'm on the horse and taking care of the cows, but I have my phone with me, internet connected, are we still good? I think we are. I want to thank you for joining me on the Security Plus study group. Thank you on the after show for the questions. Thank you for calling in. Thank you for your comments about the courses and everything you do throughout the month. Would not be able to do it without you. Don't forget, we have another one of these coming next month on the 20th. The schedule was scrambled around a bit this month because of the hurricane. We did not have our Network Plus study group last week. Instead, I bounced it to be next week. So next week would normally, there's nothing going on. I got a brand new study group that was already written weeks ago that is just ready for you to work on. So you're more than welcome to come back here next week at this time. I've got Network Plus ready to go. We'll just do this whole thing all over again with Network Plus questions. It'll be great. And maybe I'll have some of those answers for you about the Equifax piece as well. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on the Professor Messer Security Plus Study Group.